Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again. Here with a reaction to Mr. Tom Satterly, former Delta Force operator, hopefully I said his name right, and goes for about 13, 14 minutes thereabouts. So I don't know a heck of a lot about Delta Force or their selection. So the person that sent this through to me says that this gentleman speaks in a bit more detail about it. So I'm looking forward to it. So if you're here for this, let's jump in.
Delta Force, call the unit. Yeah, I went to that selection shortly after I made the Green Berets, and they were gone in the first Gulf War when I got there to my first Green Beret unit. They were all deployed to the first Gulf War. No one was there. I couldn't go with them again because I had a date to go to Delta. And once you select, once you have a selection date for Delta, you're non-deployable. They want you. You're not going anywhere until they test you. If you make it, you're going to see them. If you don't make it, you go back here. Then you go deploy.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's understandable if you put in your application, from what I understand, what little I know. If you put in your application and it's been accepted, then by the sounds of things, what he's saying is he couldn't deploy anywhere and he's got to wait until he gets the chance. But I think also at the same time, you'd be wanting to deploy. If a deployment came up and it happened to be a bit before your selection or whatever, you got to make up your mind, I suppose, for the most part, but it sounds like you don't get that option there. If your application's been accepted, then you just got to sit tight and wait till you get a chance to go on selection. So try and crack it, so then make it into Delta Force, then you're definitely going to be deploying.
So I was terrified I wouldn't make it again. I'm never going to go anywhere. And I did. I made it as a young guy. And, that's when your life changes. When you actually go and do the job you've been training for, because I'd always gone to school. Green Beret.
I wonder how old he was. Hopefully he talks about how old he was when he did it. He says he made it as a young guy. So 20s, early 20s, maybe just on 20, who knows? Hopefully he talks about it. But if you know, let me know. I think this guy's been on the Sean Ryan show as well, and I haven't watched that. And so, obviously I should have mentioned he's here on the Mulligan Brothers, who also have a great podcast where he's been interviewed here. So I don't know how old Mr. Tom Satterly was when he joined Delta Force, but he says as a young guy.
Selection, this selection, that selection. Boom, here I am now. Finally through the selection of the unit, finally through the train up of the unit. And now I begin.
The training itself, or the tests that you had to go through, I think you'd said that there was at no point you wanted to quit, and you had that inner drive, apart from you got to the very end and it's did you call it the long walk or the long, and you had this moment of weakness. Could you talk us through that story?
I broke down. I was climbing a mountain, and it was...
What have you had before that? Just for context, what had you done up and...
The long walk, it sounds like, that's interesting, eh? The long walk. To me, it's interesting because I don't know if that's the last activity that they have to do for the Delta Force selection, but you definitely have a bit of a long walk at the end of the New Zealand selection and on your own. But I enjoyed it, and I think most people that go on and get to that stage are probably more excited about it. I'd like to think. I think they're probably quite excited about it by that stage. Like, you've come so far, you've covered so much ground and distance. Like, what's another 60 kilometers? So I don't know how long their long walk is, what distance that is, but in NZ, you got a 60-kilometer pack march to do at the end of all the other stuff that you've done, if you've made it that far. In Australia, you don't have an isolated long walk, for want of a better term, or a 60 clicker. You have lucky dip, and you go through that process as a small team. So yeah, pretty interesting, the long walk. I wonder how long
till that point, like
2.5 weeks with a heavy rucksack of about 12 miles a day in the mountains. So it's nothing flat, 12 miles a day, every day. After you start off, let's back up. You start off with a 20-mile road march and a PT test and a swim test. That's the way they did it when I went through. If you make that, you get to start. If you don't make that, guys go home on day one. You didn't make the 20-mile, you didn't make the swim test, you didn't make the PT test, you weren't good enough. They know by now with all the assessments that they've done, if you get a certain score on a PT test, they know you're not going to make it past like week 3 or something. They already know that.
That's cool as. I've never heard anything like to this sort of detail before about the Delta Force selection. So the 20 miler, I'm assuming is a pack march, swim test and PT test. Now, I also love, I know I've spoken in other reactions, how vague it is with regards to the Delta Force selection. And even, is it green team or development group? Even how vague that selection and what's involved in there. I love how it seems to be anyway, and I could be wrong. There may be a whole bunch of stuff out there which divulges all the information, but I personally like how there's not a lot known about those particular selection courses. This is the most I've heard. So 20 miler, swim test, PT test. There's probably some other stuff, but those 3 activities, I'm assuming in the first phase or first stage or whatever it is of the selection, you get through that for the Delta Force selection, you get through that. Then, like you said, they've been around long enough. They know if you can't get through those or you get certain times. So he didn't say what the cutoffs were or are, which again, I like about that. If you don't know what those cutoffs are, and if you're having to push hard to get through those, potentially redlining, and you don't know how long this is going to go for, which I assume as well. I don't know if they're given a time frame of how long their selection goes for. But man, that adds a whole nother level of not only complexity, but strategy is involved, and also physical and mental preparation and your ability to cope with that uncertainty during a course like that. Because if you don't know what's happening, how long it's going to go for, what times you're supposed to get or meet, it puts a whole different level of stress and stuff onto the individual, which I think is cool.
You've done it so long. And before the long walk, you've done the 20 miler, the 12 miles a day after that for 2 weeks. And that increases. So you go from 12 to, I don't know, 15 more. I don't know. Nobody really knows the actual distances, but they make them longer every day. And your rucksack gets heavier about every other day.
Let's crack up. Here's somebody that's been through it, and I suppose it can be a bit of a blur. I know I wouldn't remember everything from my New Zealand or Australian selection. I probably remember more from the New Zealand one than I do the Australian one, just because it's a shorter period of time and it's a pretty structured process in terms of how that flows. For here, though, I don't know how long the Delta Force selection goes for. I'm hearing what sounds like some similarities between them and 2 SAS, which isn't surprising because the founder of Delta, I think, went over and did or modeled it off the UKSF selection. And I think that person from the US also passed or completed the UKSF selection. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I'm in the ballpark anyway in terms of what's happened there. But hearing him say, like, I don't know, the 12 miles and I think 15 miles, the pack gets increasingly heavier every other day or whatever, however long that period goes for, sounds similar to what I've heard Big Phil talk about and during the hills phase, or aptitude, I think he called it.
And you end up with about 65, 70 pounds on your back. And then, oh, by the way, here's the final event. And it's called the long walk, go. And, they give you the route all the way through the national.
65, 70 pounds, that's about 30 to 35 kilos, thereabouts, in terms of how we use the metrics for weight and all that sort of stuff. So we work in kgs and that here. So that's, 65, 70 pounds or 70 to 75 pounds, about 30, 35 kilos. Thereabouts. Don't quote me on that. I'm no expert on that.
Forced, and it's horrible. I'm thinking, 40 miles. I go about this many miles an hour. I'll be done in this many hours. I didn't realize that was never going to happen. It was going to take like 18 hours to get something like that done. And I was nearly done. Well, I thought I was nearly done. And I was on this huge mountain going up out of a creek. And it's the only mountain in the whole place where the contour interval changes, where you look at grid lines on a map and it says the contour interval is 20 meters. So from one line to another is 20 meters in elevation gain. And so if they're really tight together, it's straight up wall. If they're spread out, it's more of a gradual. Well, I'm looking at this thing, and I know the instructor said you can take the road this time or you can go straight up the mountain. I'm like, the road goes way around and back up. I'm taking the straight up route. Well, I didn't realize the contour interval had doubled. So it was twice as steep as any other mountain we've climbed. And I got a quarter of the way up and I started getting smoked, and I was grabbing trees to walk, climb up it, starving. So I tried to eat going up the hill, never stopped walking. And I got stuck. At Mount Laurel. It ripped off my compass hanging off. I had my hand.
Stuck on Mount Laurel, wherever that is. But that is, he's definitely chosen, by the sounds of things, the harder route. Just trying to think there that the instructor has given them the option: you can take the road this time or you can go up. And looking at the road, I suppose, you could be forgiven for thinking, no, that goes way out and around and then coming back, however long that is. It must have looked far on the map. And then he chose to go straight up. That's hearty, man. That must have been incredibly steep. Sounds like he's bloody almost rock climbing. So anyway,
There's a string tied to my belt so I wouldn't lose it. I dropped it to climb through some stuff, kept going, went to grab it, and it was all string. The compass had gotten ripped off by the Mountain Laurel. I panicked. I freaked out. I turned around and went back. I started cussing God. I was freaking out. Like, I'm going to come up here with a chainsaw, cut all this down. I'm going to kill everything. And then I found my compass. I'm like, oh God, I'm sorry. Went back, turned it on, and I started going. I made my way, but it was a breakdown of everything. I can't believe I tried this hard. I can't believe I've come this far. I can't believe I'm here now without a compass, and and I'm dead and I'm tired. And I get to the next truck and I'm thinking it's the end. He's like, your next RV's that way. I'm like, oh my God, there's more. And that was 2 map sheets. Cross one map sheet, grab the other, and keep going. And that was a flat trail on top of a mountain that was like a river. And I remember walking the whole thing with a joke in my head, like time to change the water in the boots. I just walked through another puddle and rinse out the old water. And it just kept going. And my mind was like, how's there a river on top of a mountain? And it just keeps going. And the whole trail was just water because it was raining the whole time. And I just, the next route, I'm going to quit at the next truck. I'm just going to quit at the next truck. And I'm thinking, I get closer to the final, what I think is the final truck. I'm like, what's the final truck? I don't need to quit. And I check in. He's like, your next RV is on the hood of the truck. I'm like, another one? And I almost quit. Right then. Nope, I'm not doing another one. That's it.
Wow, that's interesting to hear. I thought I heard, maybe it was him or the interviewer, saying that he never thought about quitting, but that he had hit and this is probably the part that is why he's asked him to speak about it, that he hit a hard point or a challenging point or whatever. The whole thing sounds hard and challenging, don't get me wrong. And it's interesting listening to this guy who's been there, done that, past, who's openly talking about he thought about quitting at the next checkpoint, that I'm going to get to the next checkpoint, I'm going to quit. But clearly didn't. And I think for anybody, what comes to mind for me, I think for anybody that's considering doing selection or wanting to join a unit, an SF unit, again, and I know I've spoken about this in other videos, that it is okay to think about quitting. I think anyway. I don't recall a time for me ever thinking about quitting when I went through the New Zealand selection or the Australian one. I've mentioned that in other reaction videos as well. But I know 100% a number of people that have thought about quitting, and some that did quit, and then they went back and they did it again and they smashed it out of the park. So for this guy to be talking about that, I think it just helps reinforce, hopefully, to anybody that's considering that sort of career pathway, that it's normal, right? Selection is designed to break you down, to cause you to get in your own head, to make you want to quit, and or potentially to make you think about quitting. And I think that's a normal part of it. So people shouldn't be beating themselves up, is where I'm going with my comments. And it should not be beating themselves up thinking, oh, I shouldn't be here if I'm thinking about quitting. I'm going to leave. Like, that's part of what selection is designed to do. If you happen to be at the same time, I know some people that never thought about quitting as well, similar to me. If you happen to be, let's say, one of those lucky ones that doesn't think that way during their selection, great. There's nothing wrong with that either. But just know that for anybody considering this sort of career pathway, it is okay to think about quitting during that selection. The key part is just not acting on it. Okay, that's my take anyway. So if you're going to think about quitting, okay, that's where you need to get in your own head and you need to start trying to quieten those voices or shift those negative thoughts off to the side and out of the way and find ways to navigate how you keep going. What tools do you use? What do you say to yourself to positively reinforce your drive and your desire to want to keep going? Anyway, let's see what he talks about.
Let me plot it. Let me just plot it. Let me go as far as I can in this process before I quit. I plot it and realize that's like 100 meters. It's 100 meters up this power line. Okay, I'll do that. Showed him where I was going. He's like, all right, go. I start humping. My head goes down again. You know, you're tired. You're worn down. I'm just staring at my boots, feeling sorry for myself, walking down this power line. And all of a sudden I hear, Sergeant Satterly. I'm like, I hadn't been called that in a long time. It's like blue 2, red 1, whatever. It's color number. And there was color number because there's no humanization there. And I heard my name and I was like,
sorry, that's cool. I got to pause that. Color a number, blue 2, red 1, whatever, however they do theirs. And him saying that there's no humanization there. That's another important part, eh? Like, I think people hopefully have got the idea when they've watched a number of documentaries or whatever about selection. Like, that's intentional as well. And I think Big Phil Campion sums it up best, in my opinion, when he's talking about the UKSF selection, but I think that applies to selections in general. Like, they don't care who you are, what rank you are, where you come from. During selection, they don't care. You're just a number to them. And it's up to you to work through every stage as well as you can, perform as well as you can, and it's up to you to earn an opportunity to progress further into training. So, hard case listening to him talk about that and mentioning that there's no humanization in it. That's normal in selection courses. But what also triggered my memory was when he said he got given his next checkpoint where earlier he had said he was going to quit. And then he said, I'll just plot it. Just let me plot it. My mind instantly, when he said those words, cast me back to Bill Bestick. Wonderful human being, good man, great soldier, and just somebody I consider a great friend. And so he spoke about, when I interviewed him a few years ago now, around breaking things down. And I know maybe I can't do this whole checkpoint or this whole day now, but he broke it down into, what can I do? Well, I can plot this down. I can plot down the next checkpoint, where it is. What else can I do? I can fill up my water bottles. I can get back on my feet and I can start walking towards that next checkpoint. I can look at the map when that next checkpoint is starting to look too far away, and I'm probably adding trying to add a little bit more, although Bill used better words than what I'm using here. But I suppose when you get into that point and you're looking at your map and go, man, that checkpoint looks really far away, just breaking that down even further into smaller chunks. Well, that tree over there is on my bearing. I can get to that tree. And so I keep moving to that tree. Okay, that next feature there is on my bearing. I'll walk to that feature. So that's what came to my mind when I heard him talking about, I'll just plot the bearing and see where it is. And then only 100 meters away, that seems weird. Either it's a trick to go, yep, it's just a nice short leg, and then we're going to give you a massive long 15, 20 plus kilometer leg after that. Or it's potentially the last checkpoint. Who knows?
I looked up and there's 2 men standing on this rock right in front of me. I hadn't even been looking, right? And one of them was a sergeant major, one of them was the commander of the organization. And I'm like, oh. And they were like, for you, selection has ended. And I'm like, I go, why? What? No, and they, no, for you, stress faces over. I'm like, no, I'll keep going. What I do? And they started to grab my rucksack and I'm fighting. I'm like, no, I'll keep going. He finally gets, starts to pull it off. He's like, listen, you're done. You finished. I'm like, why? He goes, you completed it. I was like, oh, okay. I start bawling like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, all right, let me help you carrying your rucksack for you. You're like a human again. And
it's interesting hearing him talk about that. He started bawling. I assume tears coming down his face. It must have been just an overwhelming feeling of joy, relief, happiness, all positive stuff to go through something like that. The uncertainty, the amount of stress, the physical heartache and stuff that's involved in a selection course in and of itself, and to get to the end and to be told you completed it. That's awesome. It sounds like, so they've told him he's completed it. I'm assuming he still doesn't know if he's progressing and able to stay there and start whatever the next phase of training is. Clearly he was able to, because he's sitting here sharing part of the story now. But I'd like to think that that's still a part of the process, the nervousness, the unknowing, or the not knowing, I should say, whether or not you've done enough, performed well enough to earn a place to progress on to further training, etc. So yeah, that's awesome. Fighting the commander of the unit and the SAR major of the unit, wanting to continue on, that would have said a lot to them as well. They're probably used to that. They've probably got a whole bunch of mixed reactions, I would imagine, in their time there. They may get people that just go, oh, great, it's over. Or they may get people like him that go, no, I'll keep going, who aren't sure, why am I being stopped?
Here's a fire over here. And I was the only one at the fire, like, oh my God, am I the last guy? Am I the first guy? What's happening? Hand out some glue vine and some sandwiches, and like, all right, well, get in the back of the van. We'll take you back to the barracks. I'm the only guy in the van. It's a 15-passenger van. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's horrible. I just crawled under the seats and fell asleep. It was like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive. Got back to the barracks, like, all right, go ahead and take a shower and go to bed. I'm like, well, I need more than that, right? How am I doing? Did I make it? They just don't tell you. So I went inside. I was like, oh God.
Right. So it is still the same. Like, yeah, they don't tell him I need more than that. And you're not getting the answers. Man, all on his own though. So 15-seater van, I wonder how many were left, or wonder how many started the long walk. Yeah. Amazing if he's just the only guy that's completed it, or maybe that's just how they do it. They got such resources and facilities. Maybe they just have a dedicated van, each person. They just put them in different barracks or something. Who knows?
I literally washed all of my military gear. I drug a chair into the shower, and I sat in the chair with the water running over me. I cleaned all my gear, packed it back up like I'm ready, climbed in the bed, and I woke up when other guys were coming into the barracks and doing their thing. And I was like, oh God, there's more people here. Good. This is good or bad, I don't know, but it feels good that there's more people here. I was like number 2 to finish, and I didn't know it. The number 1 guy was already asleep back in the barracks. See, I don't know when he got there before me, but he had been to selection before. So he kind of knew most of the route, and he was quicker with it. And I was like,
wow, that's cool as even to come in second. That's awesome. Just to finish it is awesome, right? But going through that, I could just imagine sitting in the shower, got all his gear laid out, washing himself and his gear, then obviously drying that out, then repacking it, etc. Good drills, getting all that sorted, and then other guys coming in. So yeah, wonder how many got through. Or
number 2. And I was like, oh man, I didn't know that till later when the people started showing up, but there was a lot less people, and all through selection, you're in the barracks. You don't see each other in the day. You only see each other at night when you get back to the barracks or the base camp up on the mountain. When you get to that phase, you don't know if they made it, or you don't know if they're somewhere else. And so all the guys that wouldn't show up at the barracks, you just come up, there'd be an empty bed. And you go to the classroom, there'd be the exact same amount of chairs as people, because they'd always pull a chair. They lost 5 guys, they'd pull 5 chairs that day. So there was always a butt in a chair, and you never saw the empty chairs. But guys would drop and you wouldn't know it, and until the end. You're like, oh my God, I lost that guy. A friend of mine got, he didn't make it. And in the end, there were like, start off with like 120, I think. And then in the end, there was like 18 of us that had made it. And then you got to go through the board, psychological evaluations, and then the board of all the commanders, all the sergeant majors, and all the shrinks and all the cadre talking about you and what you did, and then sitting you up on a stage in a chair and asking you questions, for as long as they need. And then they decide if you make it. And then if you make it, then they tell you, okay, probation, you got 6 months of school, you'll be kicked out in a second. And you're like, oh my God. And then you make the train up. You go to your squad, and you're like, oh, thank God, I made it. And they're like, here on probation, 18 months. Shut up, keep up if you can.
That's cool. It does sound like, I guess, UK, NZ, even Australia, different terminology, the train up and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure what that is, whether that's their reinforcement cycle. I don't know. Obviously, UKSF, their whole selection is the 6 months, which combines the cycle into that. New Zealand and Australia got a different process where they've got the selection itself, and then you get the decision whether or not you've made it onto the reinforcement cycle. So that cycle could be anywhere from 9 months to 12 months to 18 months. And then when you get into the unit, you go onto a probationary period as well. So you'll have anywhere from 12 to 18 months probation, which sounds pretty similar. So again, some different terminology and wording and stuff and how they do things, or how each of those units do things, but it sounds pretty similar essentially. One of the parts that stands out, like I love again, is not getting into a lot of the detail, right, of the selection, the nitty gritty, but some of the high level points, the long walks, the 20-miler swim test, PT test, the panel at the end being set up, I suppose on a bit of a platform, for want of a better term. That's how I imagine it, the way that he described it. And then the swarm of operators and leaders that are members of that unit, as well as the psychs with the psych evaluations and stuff, just grilling each person for as long as they need to, asking questions to find out the information that they need before they make a decision and progress them on. That must be daunting, sitting there and having a whole panel grill you on questions and things like that, and you're trying to stay as calm as you can and answer those questions. Basically, you just tell the truth, answer them honestly in terms of the questions that come to you, and let the cards fall where they may. So yeah,
it's
anyway.
like, okay, I'll shut up, keep up if I can. And after that, every day's with a card to get in and out, get in and out. If you're swiping its green, you're in. If you're swiping its red, you're like, what happened? You got to call somebody like, yep, you're good or not. Your luggage is out front, or you're no longer welcome here, kind of thing. And it's like, what? So every day is like a guessing game. Every door you go in, you have to swipe your card, green or red, green or red. If it's red one day, you're like, I don't know what happened. You got to go figure it out. Somebody's going to tell you what happened.
Well, that's crazy. That's awesome. I like that as well. When he said, "Oh yeah, they swiping out the card," I was like, when I first heard that, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's normal." Like, you get our card, we get to swipe in and out of the gate or the compound to just drive in or get in and out. Same to get into the buildings. Swipe your card, tap your card, and you get in. Sometimes the cards needed to be programmed for other areas, depending on which role you were serving in or what you were doing at that time. So I remember for the counter-terrorism stuff, when we went on to that role, our IDs needed to just have an extra program or whatever added to it so it could access that building, because that's where we would be going in and out for the next 12 months and working in and out of there. So otherwise, if you're not in the black role CT stuff for that year, domestic capability predominantly, then you didn't need access to it. So your card wasn't programmed to be able to go in there. But when you did, you needed to be able to get in there. But hearing this guy talk about green or red, green you're good, red you're something's wrong. Wow, like you could just find your stuff out the front or off to a side, or be told no. That's what I've heard him say just now. That's crazy. Yeah, like it's a testament to, I think the title of this video was Selection Never Ends, but also that lines up with the unit, at least in NZ and Australia, and I believe UK as well. Like, it's a daily renewable contract. You're always, whenever you show up to work, you're always looking to show up in the best shape possible, prepared to do the job that you signed up, that you volunteered to do, and to do it to a high standard. And that if you can't, and if your standards start slipping, well, then you shouldn't be expecting to stay there if you're not performing up to scratch. So to hear the green, red swipe, yeah, I think I'd like to think that guys would be fairly confident when they go and swipe their card. You know when you put in a good shift at work, when you're performing well, I think anyway. And you'd probably have a level of confidence in terms of when you're showing up to work. That's my take anyway. I mean, that's how I felt. Not that we had a not that we had a green red swipe system when I was in Australia. So, but yeah, I felt like I was always performing well at work. Maybe I was just blinded.
So every day is like stressful. Am I in today? Just getting a front gate card. One guy, I remember one guy, I don't even remember who it was, called from the visitor center. I can't get in the gate. I'm like, I don't know how to help you, bro. I don't know what you're going through either. It's one of those, he had done something stupid no one else knew about, but they found out. He showed up, red light, can't get in the gate. He had to wait in the visitor center. They brought him all his stuff. You're now assigned over here. Go check in. You never see inside again, you know?
So like demoted, like from Delta Force, or just
Yeah. You know, if you get pulled from the unit for some reason, or you leave the unit for some reason, they say, where do you want to go? Anywhere in the Army. Because just because you're not good enough here doesn't mean you're going to be not going to be great out here, but you're just not making it here anymore. You know, we need you here, and you're like here. So you can go anywhere you want out here because it's still going to be like here, and you'll still be great, but you're not going to be great here anymore, you know?
the physical tests.
Wow. I mean, it's cool that happens, that's an option based on what Tom Satterly is saying here. But I think, this is just my take, I think anybody that joins the military wanting to join the elite tier 1 SF unit or any SF unit, and they get a taste for that, and they're like, I've found my tribe, so to speak. I've found what I want to do. I don't think, for me personally, if I got told, we're not keeping you here anymore, but you can go, say back to battalion or wherever. Not that battalion's not great. I've got a battalion t-shirt on. One of my sons got this for me, my old company at 1st Battalion. Not that they're not great, but it's different, and I think anybody that's served in infantry battalion or any unit and or then gone to an SF unit, like the culture, everything is different. It is another level again, or several levels again, above where you've come from, or at least in my experience, where I had come from. And so I don't think I could, personally, I wouldn't, like the interviewer said, a demotion or being demoted out of Delta, I wouldn't stay in another unit. Like if I'd made it to the SAS, I'm either staying here and serving out the rest of my time, or I'm out. Like I'm not staying in the military. That's just where my head was at. So I wonder how many people, based on what Tom has shared here, I wonder how many of those ex-Delta Force guys do stay in the military and go serve in these other units after having lived a life of where they've been and at the level that they've been at for so long, to then be somewhere else. Maybe they do. Maybe there's a whole bunch that still stay in. But for me personally, I wouldn't see myself staying in the military if that was the case.
I'm really curious as to, you saw 120 guys there. There was probably some real physical specimens. Did all those guys make it?
No. A lot of the real big, strong guys, they kind of wear down because they got that weight plus the ruck weight. I've seen skinny little wiry guys you're laughing at, and they make it. I mean, when you see unit guys stand, if you knew who they were, well, if you saw a group of guys like, there's unit guys mixed in that crowd, you would probably pick the wrong ones. People have an idea like he's a monster stud. I mean, there are monster studs there too, right? I was 250 at one point just to try to keep up with the monster studs. But I really
250 pounds, eh? What's that in kgs? 250 pounds. 225 is about 100 kilos. Is that right? So another 25 pounds. I don't know, 110 or something like that. Maybe more. I don't know. But anyway, made me smile just because it doesn't matter, eh? Where seems to be the case. Doesn't matter which SF unit you're talking about. Get all sorts. There are big guys that probably most people would pick, oh yeah, that's a special forces soldier. And then there'd be a whole bunch of average Joes that likely don't fit the mold and don't look like or sound like they would serve in a unit like that. And so, yeah, it just makes me smile because it just seems to be the same, no matter what I've heard, whether it's UK, NZ, Australia, US. I imagine Canada's the same. I imagine the French Foreign Legion are the same. I imagine Development Group are the same. It's just, yeah, it's cool that that's a part of what makes those units, in my opinion, one of the reasons what makes those units so unique.
Because once I got big, I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't do the obstacle course very well anymore. I'm like, I wanted to get back down to the weight I was when I started. Because I started at 150. I was like a chimpanzee. I'd go anywhere. I could run anywhere. And then
150, 150 pounds, 150 pounds, 135 pounds, I think, is 60 kilos. So plus another 15, 150. What's that, like 65, 70 kgs? Something like that? 70, maybe somewhere between 70 and 75 kgs. That's light. Holy heck. I mean, it's not uncommon, don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's plenty of small, light people, wiry guys that are in the unit. But man, he wanted to get back to where he was. So from 250 back down to 150.
when I wanted to get big, because one day some guy's like, here's a string on your shirt. He goes, oh, that's your arm. And I was like, okay, time to work out. So I started working out with a goal of getting big. And that kind of hurt me a little bit, let down the road with my career, but just due to the extra weight. But you can't tell who makes it because it's all in the head, right? It's all in the head. Are you going to quit? You're going to get tired and hungry? You're going to get blister and quit? I know guys that cut out the backs of their boots. Their blisters were so big on their heels, they wanted to keep going, so they cut out the back of their boot because the pressure on it was too much. Guys taking Motrin, just anything to keep going through the pain.
Guys taking Motrin. What's that? I don't know what Motrin is. Is that a drug or something? But cutting out the heels on your boots. If you need to, if your toes and that are getting mashed up too, potentially needing to cut out the top part. I don't know of and never saw anybody cut out the back of the heel of their boots or the toes off. But I wouldn't put it past people. Like if you're wanting to keep going, and we've all had blisters, right? And you feel that pressure, squeezing, rubbing, just constantly rubbing, getting worse and worse. Sometimes just lancing it can help, but that doesn't always work. So clearly, if it's worse than that, you got to find alternatives. And I think that's where that thinking outside the box comes in. You still want to keep moving. Yeah, you expose part of your foot, but you've relieved all that pressure from where your boot is rubbing. So now you can still move. And I think that's one of the many values and traits of soldiers that go and serve in the SF is just that ability to think outside the box or the square, and rather than look for and or just accept that this is my lot and I can't go on anymore, it hurts too much, they're willing to think of ways and look for solutions, look for instead of focusing on what I can't do, what can I do? What could I do to make this better? What could I do so that I could keep moving? And I think there's a lot of value in that, not only in a military setting, but in life in general. Same for people that have reasons, let's say, or excuses for not being able to get up and move and do some sort of exercise. Oh, I injured myself. Oh, I trained hard yesterday or last week, or I've got to, I've really got to dial in my recovery because this is really important. I don't want to overtrain, etc., etc. Those may be 100% true and accurate. Don't get me wrong. I'm no expert in that. But I think more often than not, they're usually just excuses and reasons to try to find ways to avoid doing those things that we want to do. And likewise on selection, are you going to use that thought and just let it be the dominating presence in the forefront of your mind in terms of this pain is too much, I can't go on any further, I can't push any harder, I can't take another step, and therefore quit? Or are you going to try to process and find ways to sort out that issue that you're having? So what he's just spoken about there, I know at least one guy has passed away now, but big Dutch fella over in Australia, Dutch heritage, I think, Jerry Rohurst, rest in peace, brother. He completed our selection in Australia with a broken foot or broken feet, like in both. I think he might have had broken bones in both feet. Not sure exactly how he did that. He might have taken a tumble or something, but the scans came back and he had fractures across the parts of his toes and his feet. And he was wondering why. He's like, man, my feet are so sore. and it just gives you an indication of. At the same time, also no, I won't name him, but a guy that I was on NZ selection with, whose feet were that blistered and skin coming off. This was in the close country phase of selection, who still finished the selection in the end. Worse for wear, yep, feet, they can, much worse than mine or anybody else's from our cohort that had passed selection, but he passed, went on, got badged, and I'm pretty sure he's still serving to this day. So like this guy said, in the mind, are you going to quit, or are you going to try to find ways to solve the issues that you're having right now? Try to find ways to work around them and keep going.
Now, but you got guys that quit. You're like, I don't want that guy ever on a target with me. If he's already thought about quitting and giving up, then that's it, right? Everybody thinks about quitting and giving up. If you go through with it, right? Like, I don't want to work. I don't want to work next to you in combat, because
I'm glad, sorry to pause it so often, but I'm glad he said that, because, like he said, he was thinking about quitting, and he was thinking that he was going to quit at the next checkpoint, but he didn't. So just to hear him acknowledge that is good. But he makes a valid point. Like, you do not want to, and I didn't want to be on, I wouldn't want to be on any sort of mission or target or job, or even in training with anybody that's going to be, now that they're here, they're going to be thinking about quitting. Now, I'm fortunate. I never worked with anybody that I know of that openly expressed their thought of quitting. If they thought about quitting while we're either in training or whilst on operations, I never knew about it. I never heard about it. I didn't know that was what they might have been thinking, because I can't read people's minds, But it gave a massive amount of, for me, reassurance and confidence that I was just working with guys that we were here to the end. Like, we're going to do whatever it takes for each other, try to achieve this mission, but we're going to look out for one another, and we're not quitting. And so if anybody, to Mr. Satterly's comment here, if anybody had mentioned that they felt like quitting, I'm with him. I wouldn't want to be in that same team. I'd be like, bro, you're not coming on this job. Stay back in the forward operating base, or get out of the unit. But don't come here with that mindset thinking, oh, this is too hard. I just want to quit. I want to give up. Because then you're just a liability for those members in your team. So I'm glad that he acknowledges that. I definitely feel the same way as he does when he mentioned that, but also acknowledging, like I mentioned, like, it is normal for people during selection to think about quitting. Don't ever, this is just my take it for what it's worth. But if you're fortunate to make it into the unit, don't ever think about quitting, would be my first take. And if you do, shut your mouth, keep it tucked away in here and in here. Don't ever let it out, and keep doing what's gotten you to that point, finding solutions and ways around, solve the problems that you've been having or that you find yourself facing at this moment, and find a solution to them so that you can keep going, is what I would say.
You're quitting here, you're definitely going to quit there. So they get a group of guys that just don't quit. Just don't quit. No matter what it is, you just keep going. You don't know the time standard. You don't know what place you have in line. You don't know how good you're doing or how bad you're doing. They don't tell you anything. Just go ahead. Your next place is there. Get there. There's no time limit. So you just go as fast as you can, or you just walk it and chill, and you don't make the times. You don't know.
I think there probably is when he says no time limit, I'm assuming here, so don't quote me on it. Much like NZ Australia anyway, there are times and there are time limits, but they just don't tell you what they are. So it's up to you to move as well as you can for as long as you can, and complete those tasks as quick as you can, but do them well, if that makes sense. So I would imagine that there are time limits, and he's right. Like, you can either push hard, or you can just chill and relax and cruise along and think that you're okay. But I think if you choose that latter option, you'll probably not long get a tap on the shoulder and be told, yeah, no, you're not cutting it, far too slow. We'll see you later. So,
what it is, I went as fast as I possibly could everywhere I went. If I couldn't run, I walked as fast as I could. I'd run down hills, I'd walk up hills, I'd drink water without stopping. And all that they teach you. They literally show you that. They walk through the woods with you for 3 days with instructors, showing you how to walk up a mountain without smoking your legs by not locking your knees with every step, how to drink water on a flat ground without stopping and drinking water. Never take a
That's cool. Like, even just hearing that, it sounds like, what, for 3 days, I think he said? Sounds like a bit of a pre-selection. That's what it sounds like to me. So in NZ, they have a bit of a pre-selection process, about 5 days before you go into the 9 to 10 days testing, or whatever, however long it is these days. Australia, don't recall. There was like a barrier testing, but it wasn't like a pre-selection, like you were being tested because you had to meet and get through certain stage gates before you could progress or even be considered for selection or not. So that it was nothing like a New Zealand pre-selection. Doesn't sound like this. Like if you've got the instructors walking with you, which sounds like what they have in NZ, pre-selection phase, where you do have badge members that are out, or at least during my one, they were out on the trail with us during that pre-selection phase, testing navigation, giving us little tasks, etc. Not super friendly to us, but not real cold or standoffish either. But here it sounds like they're teaching them stuff to help them along. Now, on my pre-selection, I don't remember the instructors being overly instructorish, like teaching us stuff. It was more getting a gauge and testing us in terms of where we were at and getting us to do things. They weren't really, like he was saying, teaching them how to walk up hills without smoking their legs, without locking their legs out, how to be eating and drinking on the move, etc. Like we weren't getting any of that sort of stuff during my pre-selection, but it's pretty cool if that's what happens, or something like that happens on the Delta Force selection with badged members in their unit, because all those tips are helpful, especially if he was a young guy when he went in. So especially if you're young and you maybe haven't been exposed to a lot of that stuff, that's going to be super helpful for people.
Anyway. Right, because now you're just twice as far back. You've lost that time. You're still going to be tired. Taking a break feels good for a second, but you're still tired. So I just kept walking and ended up making it, obviously. But you never know if you're making it or not until that day they tell you you're in. And then you're in, but you're in right now. I mean, the quota selection is an ongoing process.
I'm going to pause that there because I think I timed that right. A couple of seconds left. Selection is an ongoing process. Like you said, daily renewable contract, green, red on the swipe card. Cool, man. Like hearing that. I appreciate the video that was sent, this video link that was sent through for me to do a reaction to it. So appreciate the time spent there and thinking of me to get my thoughts on it. A lot of stuff in here. I spoke probably way too long, but and way too much. But anyway, if you're here and following and being kind enough to support my channel, I assume you're here to hear my thoughts and to get my reactions and take on what the person who's been interviewed is talking about. So that's probably why I've babbled on so much. Anyway, appreciate your time and support as always. Thank you for stopping by. If you came by here, and thank you particularly if you made it all the way through to the end. That being said, the message is always the same. Regardless of any challenges, trials, difficulties you may be going through, obstacles that may be in your way or that you may perceive to be in your way right now, I just encourage you to keep tuning up. Keep staying in the fight. Put one foot in front of the other. Take one day at a time. Know and trust that things can do and will get better if you want them to. The sun will shine again. There is a light at the end of that tunnel, and better days are always closer than you and I think. So just stick at it. Keep at it. Keep tuning up. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there is a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.